in which our protagonists, Anna and Levine, finally meet, and in which one of their tales comes to an end. Chapter 14. The doctor was not up yet, and the footman said he went to bed late and was not to be wakened, but would be getting up soon. The footman was cleaning the lamp glasses and seemed to be very absorbed in it. His attention to the glasses and indifference to what was happening at home at first astounded Levine, but, thinking better, he realized at once that no one knew, or was obliged to know, his feelings, and that his actions had to be all the more calm, thoughtful, and resolute, so as to break through this wall of indifference and achieve his goal. "Don't rush and don't overlook anything," Levine said to himself, feeling a greater and greater upsurge of physical strength and attentiveness to all he was going to do. Having learned that the doctor was not up yet, Levine, out of all the plans he could think of, settled on the following. Kuzma would go with a note to another doctor. He himself would go to the pharmacy to get the opium, and if, when he came back, the doctor was still not up, he would bribe the footman, or, if he refused, awaken the doctor by force at all costs. At the apothecary's, a lean dispenser, with the same indifference with which the footman had cleaned the glasses, was compressing powders into pills for a waiting coachman, and refused him the opium. Trying not to hurry or become angry, Levine began persuading him, giving him the names of the doctor and the midwife, and explaining what the opium was needed for. The dispenser asked in German for advice about providing the medicine, and, getting approval from behind a partition, took out a bottle and a funnel, slowly poured from the big bottle into a small one, stuck on a label, sealed it, despite Levine's request that he not do so, and also wanted to wrap it up. That was more than Levine could bear. He resolutely tore the bottle from his hands and ran out through the big glass door. The doctor was not up yet, and the footman, now occupied with spreading a carpet, refused to wake him. Levine unhurriedly took out a 10-ruble note and, articulating the words slowly, yet wasting no time, handed him the note and explained to Pyotr Dmitritch how great and significant the previous unimportant Pyotr Dmitritch now seemed to Levine, had promised to come at any time, that he would certainly not be angry, and therefore he must wake him at once. The footman consented and went upstairs, inviting Levine into the consulting room. Through the door Levine could hear the doctor coughing, walking about, washing and saying something. Some 3 minutes passed. To Levine they seemed more like an hour. He could not wait any longer. "Pyotr Dmitritch! Pyotr Dmitritch!" he said in a pleading voice through the open door. "For God's sake, forgive me. Receive me as you are. It's already been more than 2 hours." "Coming, coming," replied the voice, and Levine was amazed to hear the doctor chuckle as he said it. "For one little moment. Coming." 2 more minutes went by while the doctor put his boots on, and another 2 minutes while he put his clothes on and combed his hair. "Pyotr Dmitritch," Levine began again in a pitiful voice. But just then the doctor came out, dressed and combed. "These people have no shame," thought Levine, combing his hair while we perish. "Good morning," the doctor said to him, holding out his hand as if teasing him with his calmness. "Don't be in a hurry. Well, sir?" Trying to be as thorough as possible, Levine began to give all the unnecessary details of his wife's condition, constantly interrupting his story with a request that the doctor come with him at once. "Don't you be in a hurry, you see. I'm probably not even needed, but I promised, and so I'll come if you like, but there's no hurry. Sit down, please. Would you care for some coffee?" Levine looked at him, asking with his eyes whether he was laughing at him, but the doctor never even thought of laughing. "I know, sir, I know," the doctor said, smiling. "I'm a family man myself, but in these moments we husbands are the most pathetic people. I have a patient whose husband always runs out of the stable on such occasions. But what do you think, Pyotr Dmitritch? Do you think it may end well?" "All the evidence points to a good outcome." "Then you'll come now," said Levine, looking spitefully at the servant who brought the coffee. "In about an hour." "No, for God's sake." "Well, let me have some coffee first." The doctor began on his coffee. The two were silent. "The Turks are certainly taking a beating, though. Did you read yesterday's dispatch?" the doctor said, chewing his roll. "No, I can't stand it," said Levine, jumping up. "So you'll be there in a quarter of an hour?" "In half an hour." "Word of honor?" When Levine returned home, he drove up at the same time as the princess, and together they went to the bedroom door. There were tears in the princess' eyes, and her hands were trembling. Seeing Levine, she embraced him and wept. "What news, darling Lizaveta Petrovna?" she said, seizing the hand of Lizaveta Petrovna, who came out to meet them with a radiant and preoccupied face. "It's going well," she said. "Persuade her to lie down. It will be easier." From the moment he had woken up and realized what was happening, Levine had prepared himself to endure what awaited him, without reflecting, without anticipating, firmly locking up all his thoughts and feelings, without upsetting his wife, but on the contrary, calming and supporting her, not allowing himself even to think of what would happen, of how it would end. Going by his inquiries about how long it usually lasts, Levine had prepared himself in his imagination to endure and keep his heart under control for some 5 hours, and that seemed possible to him. But when he came back from the doctor's and again saw her sufferings, he began to repeat more and more often, "Lord, forgive us and help us," to sigh and lift up his eyes, and he was afraid that he would not hold out, that he would burst into tears or run away. So tormenting it was for him, and only 1 hour had passed. But after that another hour passed, 2, 3, all 5 hours that he had set for himself as the furthest limit of his endurance, and the situation was still the same, and he still endured because there was nothing else he could do, thinking every moment that he had reached the final limit of endurance, and that his heart was about to break from compassion. But more minutes passed, hours and more hours, and his feelings of suffering and dread grew and became more intense. All the ordinary circumstances of life, without which nothing could be imagined, ceased to exist for Levine. He lost awareness of time, sometimes minutes, those minutes when she called him to her and held her sweaty hand, which now pressed his with extraordinary force, now pushed him away, seemed like hours to him, and sometimes hours seemed like minutes. He was surprised when Lizaveta Petrovna asked him to light a candle behind the screen, and he discovered that it was already 5 o'clock in the evening. If he had been told that it was now only 10 o'clock in the morning, he would have been no more surprised. Where he had been during that time he did not know, any more than he knew when things had happened. He saw her burning face, bewildered and suffering, then smiling and comforting him. He saw the princess, red, tense, her gray hair uncurled, biting her lips in an effort to hide her tears. He saw Dolly and the doctor smoking vat cigarettes, and Lizaveta Petrovna with her firm, resolute, and comforting face, and the old prince pacing the reception room with a frown. But how they all came and went, and where they were, he did not know. The princess was now with the doctor in the bedroom, now in the study where a laid table had appeared. Then it was not she, but Dolly. Then Levine remembered being sent somewhere. Once he was sent to move a table and a sofa. He did it zealously, thinking it was for her, and only later learned that he had prepared his own bed. Then he was sent to the study to ask the doctor something. The doctor answered, and then began talking about the disorders in the Duma. Then he was sent to the princess' bedroom to fetch an icon in a gilded silver casing, and with the princess old maid, he climbed up to take it from the top of a cabinet and broke the icon lamp. The princess maid comforted him about his wife and the icon, tucking it behind the pillow. But where, when, and why all this happened he did not know, nor did he know why the princess took him by the hand and, gazing pitifully at him, asked him to calm down, why Dolly kept telling him to eat something, and leading him out of the room, and even the doctor looked at him gravely and commiseratingly and offered him some drops. He knew and felt only that what was being accomplished was similar to what he had accomplished a year ago in a hotel in a provincial capital, on the deathbed of his brother Nikolai. But that had been grief, and this was joy. But that grief and this joy were equally outside all ordinary circumstances of life, were like holes in this ordinary life, through which something higher showed. And just as painful, as tormenting in its coming, was what was now being accomplished, and just as inconceivably in contemplating this higher thing, the soul rose to such heights as it had never known before, where reason was no longer able to overtake it. Lord, forgive us and help us, he constantly repeated to himself, feeling, in spite of so long and seemingly so complete an estrangement, that he was turning to God just as trustfully and simply as in his childhood and early youth. All this time he had two separate moods, one away from her presence with the doctor, who smoked one fat cigarette after another, putting them out against the edge of the full ashtray, with Dolly and the prince, where they talked of dinner, politics, Marya Petrovna's illness, where Levine would suddenly forget what was happening for a moment and feel as if he were waking up, and the other in her presence, by her head, where his heart was ready to burst from compassion, but would not burst, and he prayed to God without ceasing, and each time he was brought out of momentary oblivion by a cry reaching him from the bedroom. He fell into the same strange delusion that had come over him at the first moment. Each time, hearing a cry, he jumped up and ran to vindicate himself, remembering on the way that he was not to blame, and then he longed to protect and help her. But looking at her, he again saw that it was impossible to help, and he was horrified and said, Lord, forgive us and help us. And the more time that passed, the stronger the two moods became, the calmer he became, even forgetting her sufferings and his own helplessness before them. He would jump up, wishing to run away somewhere, and run to her. Sometimes, when she called him again and again, he blamed her. But seeing her obedient, smiling face and hearing the words, I've worn you out, he blamed God. Then, remembering God, he at once asked him to forgive and have mercy. If you enjoy this format, please leave a like and subscribe and return tomorrow for the next chapter.